Now what we're going to do is solve square root and cube root equations. First thing that we're going to do is we're always going to isolate whatever the root is, square root or cube root. Then we get rid of the root by doing the opposite operation. And then we simplify the equation and solve it. So if we're looking at our first example, what we're going to do is we're going to subtract the 5. We get the square root of 2x minus 3. So once we isolate the square root, then what we do is we get rid of the root by doing the opposite operation. So in this case, we're going to square it because it's a square root. That gives us 2x minus 3 equals 25. I'm going to add the 3, and that gives me 2x is equal to 28. And I divide by 2, and I get x is equal to 14. Now, with each one of these, what we have to do is we have to check for extraneous solutions because not all the answers work. So we're just going to use a little bit of mental math. We're taking the 14 and we're plugging it in. 2 times 14 is 28, minus 3 is 25. The square root of 25 is 5. 5 plus 5 is 10, not 0. So that means it doesn't work, and our answer is no solution. Now for the next one, we're going to do the same thing. We first isolate the root. So I'm going to add the 5. And I get 2 cube root of x plus 1 is equal to 6. I divide it by 2. I now have the root isolated. The cube root of x plus 1 is equal to 3. Now what I want to do is get rid of the root, so I'm going to do the opposite operation. So in this case, I'm cubing it because it's a cube root, and I get x plus 1 equals 27. I subtract the 1 to get 26. Now, once again, what I want to do is plug it in. So if I plug in a 26, 26 plus 1 is 27. The cube root of 27 is 3. 3 times 2 is 6. 6 minus 5 is 1. So this one actually works. Now for letter C, the root is already isolated. So I'm going to square both sides. Now when I square, remember, it's a binomial, so I have to FOIL it. So I have 3x minus 6 equals x squared minus 2x minus 2x plus 4. 3x minus 6 equals x squared minus 4x plus 4. I'm going to subtract the 3x and add the 6. Subtract the 3x and add the 6. That, of course, becomes 0, and I have x squared minus 7x plus 10. So I'm looking for two numbers that when I multiply them together give me a 10, add up to negative 7, and I have negative 2, negative 5. So my two answers are 2 and 5, but once again, I have to double check to see if the numbers work. If I plug in a 2, 3 times 2 is 6, minus 6 is 0, square root of 0 is 0, 2 minus 2 is also 0, so it works. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to plug in the 5. If I plug in a 5, 5 times 3 is 15. 15 minus 6 is 9. Square root of 9 is 3. 5 minus 2 is also 3, so that means both of the answers work. So looking at the next one, first thing that we're going to do is isolate the square root. So I'm going to add the 2. And I get the square root of 2x minus 4 is equal to 2. I square both sides to get rid of the root. So 2x minus 4 is equal to 4. I'm going to add the 4, and that gives me 2x is equal to 8. And when I divide by 2, I get 4. So when I plug it in, 2 times 4 is 8, minus 4 is 4. Square root of 4 is 2. 2 minus 2 is 0. So it works. For letter E, what I'm going to do is I'm going to subtract the 4. So when I subtract the 4, I get the cube root of x minus 3 is equal to negative 3. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to square both sides. And that gives me x minus 3 is equal to 9. I add the 3, and I get x is equal to 12. Sorry, not square it, cube it. And that gives me negative 27. And then when I add the 3, that gives me negative 24. So let's plug that in. If I plug in a negative 24, that gives me negative 27. The cube root is negative 3. Negative 3 plus 4 is 1, so it works. And then for our last one, what we're going to do is we're going to square both sides. I get x plus 6 is equal to x squared. Subtract the 6, subtract the x, subtract the 6. I get 0 equals x squared minus x minus 6. So two numbers that multiply together give me negative 6, add up to negative 1, negative 3, and 2. So I have x minus 3, x plus 2. So x is equal to 3 and negative 2. Once again, what I want to do is plug them in. If I plug in a 3, 3 plus 6 is 9, square root of 9 is 3, so that works. When I plug in a negative 2, I have negative 2 plus 4 is negative 2 plus 6 is 4, square root of 4 is 2. 2 doesn't equal negative 2, so then x is equal to 3.